Today, I've been drinking some coffee and I've had an idea. It might be my greatest idea. Let me tell you what the deal is. Roasting. Roasting is a problem. Green beans, raw coffee is very dense. It's little, but it's dense. It's hard to get the heat evenly from the outside to the inside. And so evenly roasting coffee beans, it's very difficult to do. But this is it. If you cut it into little pieces, if you made the beans even smaller, would it be easier to get the heat from the outside to the inside if it's closer, right? Smaller, it's easier. But then, this is where it becomes my big brain idea of the day. If you take roasted coffee beans and you break them into chunks and then you grind the chunks, it grinds better. You get less fines. It's a more even distribution of coffee grounds. So here it is. If you take raw coffee beans and you grind them, then you roast them, then you grind them, could we get something even better? Could this be the pinnacle of coffee experience? We have to find out. We have to get some green coffee. We have to get a grinder that we can abuse, because you don't want to grind green coffee. It's very dense. It doesn't like it. But we'll find a way. I'm going to get some green coffee. I'll steal it from myself. I'll borrow a grinder from someone, probably myself, but we'll make it work. I need to finish where's my coffee gone? I might have slightly killed the grinder. I might have put too much in too soon. Now I have to take it to pieces. Third time is the charm. They might have an Akawa here, which I could borrow. Hi there. To give you an update, it's been a few days since we liberated some coffee and smashed it to pieces and took it here back to the studio to experiment. Early bad news. And actually, I feel this was just an act of revenge. So James from Square Mile, who's not me, James at Square Mile is the head of roasting. He sent me a message, I think potentially angry that I'd temporarily broken his grinder, saying, you know this has been done before. And he sent me a link to Dr. Summer Smirke's Instagram. Turns out Andre Eierman and Scott Rao gave him this idea and he did this test. And I was initially, well, a little bit upset. But reading the post, Samo had a problem. Roasting the coffee was really tricky. So he ended up just putting it on a baking sheet and kind of roasting it in the oven to see if he would get some sort of semi-decent results. He had some bad results. The coffee tasted bad. But I can't help but think maybe that's because of the roasting was why the coffee was bad. Maybe there's still hope. So I started roasting. Now, I tried with the Akawa. Turns out though, Akawas are not built to roast pieces of ground coffee. I haven't broken the roaster. I've just increased its need for maintenance. And actually, aside from that, it turns out that the stronger you run the fan, the less the little pieces mix. The dynamic of moving them around is totally different to beans, and so it just didn't work. So I had no good way of roasting, but I did have a secret weapon. This. Look at this. It's very sweet. It's called the Roastino. It's a little hand roaster. You put a heat source under here. It's hand cranked. You're going to turn this. Put coffee beans inside it. It's got a temperature probe at the back. You can see that. You can roast anything with this. It doesn't care if it's pieces or if it's beans. This was going to be the solution to my problems. Now, this is made by Gabor, who you may be familiar with as the person behind the Smart Espresso Profiler, which we've used and in some cases abused on this channel in the past. This was a project and I picked one up pretty early on. Look at it. It's so cute. We were venturing into the unknown, right? If you gave me coffee beans and this setup, I could get some tasty roasts out of that, right? It's a known quantity, roasting coffee beans. Roasting pieces of beans is not a known quantity. Let's roast some pieces of coffee. Hi, welcome to Chaos. We're in the preheat phase right now. You can see probe in the drum. No coffee in the drum yet. This goes to this little data logger converty thing that talks to my laptop. I get a little screen. This is from a jet boil, because that's what we had in the studio available for roasting. Once we're ready, we'll load coffee in. I will have to hand crank the whole time, keep things moving. When you're roasting coffee, the goal is that the air around it's during the roasting. It's not too much contact heat, right? So you need enough speed that the beans or the pieces of beans are kind of being flung up in the air and kind of tossed around. Not so little speed that they end up kind of burning against the hot metal, or too much speed, which also sticks them against the hot metal. So it's a feel, it's a vibe. Probe out, coffee in. Come here, probe. This is why we go to the gym. Line goes up. In the coffee roasting world, you'd use first crack, where the beans kind of pop, as a really key moment. In fact, we've made a whole video about roasting. You should check that out. It would make sense. But there'll be no crack here because we've already broken the bean apart. So I've got no good auditory cue of anything happening here. 4 minutes in. Felt cute, might burn these later. Sorry. Very traditional in roasting to use the olfactory senses as a gauge. See, it's hard to tell if that's steam or smoke. I suspect steam mostly. Don't forget, coffee's about 10-11% moisture. Oh, now we're getting a little browning. You'll be reassured to know that we have heat detectors in the studio, not smoke detectors. Smells like a wet sock. Shh, smells like perfection. Time to be done. We're done. Perfection. Roasted pieces of green coffee. Roasted par beans. Microbeans. What are we calling these? Messy. One interesting advantage of this is that it cools really quickly, right? It doesn't have much thermal mass in each individual piece, whereas a coffee bean, you want it cooled within about 3 minutes from sort of roasting to room temperature using air cooling. This is within a minute. Really pretty cool. Quick test. I just want to see how much moisture we've lost. So we've lost pretty much bang on 16%, which is perhaps more than you want to lose as a percentage of mass if you're trying to roast for filter coffee. But those are under the bean rules. Maybe there's new rules here, I don't know. But I probably have roasted this particular batch teeny touch dark. To be honest, I'm not super excited to drink it. But you know what I am excited to drink? The sponsor of this video, Element. Element is a sugar-free electrolyte drink mix, and it's something I've been enjoying actually for a couple of years now. Now, going back before that point, I was, if I'm honest, a little bit skeptical. I didn't know much about electrolytes, and so when people would say it's more hydrating than water, I'd be like, how can anything be more hydrating than water? Turns out I had massively underestimated the role electrolytes play, and it turned out to be hyper important for me. When I exercise, I lose quite a lot of sodium, and so actually building this into my routine has been game-changing for me. This formulation, for some people, it's kind of surprisingly high on sodium. Turns out we may have been getting that wrong, and high levels of sodium for those of us exercising or maybe eating diets like keto or paleo or other things like that. We just need more than we thought. This has been a very enjoyable journey so far. I will recommend of the cold flavors watermelon and grapefruit, particularly as my favorites. But another thing I was skeptical about, they've been doing Element hot. Wasn't sure about it, but it's been cold this winter and I have been enjoying coming in from the cold, maybe after a little run, to a hot, chocolatey, salty drink. It is a good time. If you want to try a range of the flavors, if you want to understand maybe why it's so popular with professional sports teams, well, if you go to the link in the description or go to drinkelement.com/James Hoffmann, well, with any purchase, you can get a free sampler pack of a bunch of different flavors. And if you're not sure you're going to like it, well, be confident because they give a no questions asked money back guarantee if you're not happy. Thank you so much to Element for sponsoring this video. Welcome back. When I got up this morning, I thought, how should I dress? And I thought, I should wear black to mourn the death of conventional thinking around roasting and grinding coffee. Now, it did pass the first test. This is cool. We speculated right at the start that if you pre-ground the green coffee, when you ground it later, you should get less fines. So what we did is we checked. We used the particle size analyzer. We ground the kind of pre-ground green beans. We need a better name for that. We ground some regular coffee beans, and then we partly ground some coffee beans, some roasted coffee beans, and then ground them again to see if it's just the sort of double grinding mechanism at play. But no, the pre-ground green beans had less fines, notably less fines. Wonderful news. Success. Does it translate to a delicious cup of coffee? That's the real question. There's like a little fruit, little vegetables, and some coffeeness in between, but not appalling. We'll obviously be using the V61 cup technique that we made for this channel. Link in the description down below. Now the brew time is pretty normal, which is good. Now I do want to just highlight quickly the coffee bed here, right? I'll see if I can get an angle for the camera. A lot of people freak out about having kind of a muddy bed. This is coffee that produces less fines because of the nonsense that we've done to it. Ground on a very fancy grinder with fancy burrs to produce minimal fines. You'll always get a little bit of this at finer grind settings. It's just inevitable. So don't freak out if your bed looks a touch muddy. It's just that top layer, and you can see where I scratched in underneath. It's all fine. It's the only appropriate mug for a big brain coffee idea like this one. What does the future taste like? Okay, I wouldn't describe this as a bad cup of coffee. It's not like better by any stretch. It's got some texture, it's got some body, not much acidity. Roasts maybe a touch darker, slower than it should have been. Here's the thing. This isn't the only experiment that we've done. This is not the only roast we've done. We've done a bunch, and we've tasted a bunch. They're all bad. None of them are good. None of them get even close to a good conventional roast of the whole coffee beans. That's not, I think, particularly surprising. The dynamics of roasting, the chemistry, the physics of it, highly complex. We're still not really that good at it, even with whole beans, let alone this whole other thing. Evenness is actually kind of a bigger challenge here because high quality coffee usually is screened for size to get rid of very small, very big things. If you take the pieces of coffee and you look at those, you'll see that while they're all small, the variance in size is actually pretty massive. I did try and run some through a particle size analyzer. We clogged the particle size analyzer, so I can't give you the hard sort of data on how big the pieces are. Even though they're now smaller, roasting them evenly is perhaps even more difficult. Maybe just an entire other approach is needed. And yes, you get less fines, but that doesn't help if the coffee that you're having less fines from doesn't taste good. So I would say it's not a definitive fail. I mean, it's pretty definitive at this point. I mean, it's a failure. But I wouldn't say the case is closed because I just feel like no one really knows anything about roasting pieces of bean. Or do they? I've seen things. I've seen things that nobody talks about. You see, when it comes to raw coffee, at the top, there's specialty coffee, that's the highest grade. There's commodity coffee below that. And way, way down at the bottom, there's a grade called triage. It's broken pieces, it's the sweepings from the floor, it's the worst of the worst. I've seen 1-ton bulk bags full of triage, full of broken pieces of coffee beans. Somebody is buying that. Somebody is roasting that. Somebody knows all about roasting pieces of green coffee. Now, I did speak to Dr. Smirke, and he thought that this idea could never work because when you grind the green coffee, it allows all those delicate, volatile aromas to escape during the roasting process. But maybe we just don't know how to roast green bean pieces. But somebody does. Somebody knows. Are you watching? Do you know? And if you do, well, leave us a comment down below. And if you have other ideas of things we should explore along this whole line, well, leave us a comment down there too. But for now, I shall say thank you so much for watching. Thank you for your vigilance. And I hope you have a great day. Here's the thing, if I grind raw coffee and then I roast it and then I grind it again, maybe I'm going to get better tasting espresso.